Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Salgado. Thank you for stopping in and watching the first video from JSal Art Town. For updates on current and upcoming projects, follow me on Instagram at BroBaka. For a look at my portfolio, blog posts, or to commission me, head over to my website, jessesalgado.com. And if you're in a place to do so, think about supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/jessesalgado. Let's get started with a Photoshop project, Flexus T Rexus. I'll break down my drawing process, share tricks I'm learning on my artistic journey, and some thoughts and encouragement to take with you on yours. Here we got a few quick sketch options for the type of dragon head I wanted to go with. I like to start with the head first and get the face right. All animals and people have very unique faces and individual features, tell a story, and I think that's something I really wanted to capture in each character drawing to set them apart. This picture was illustrated for a personal challenge I'm working through where I pick a random looking for artist request on our character drawing on Reddit. Every couple of weeks or so as an exercise to experiment with different forms and workflows and techniques. This request was for a dragonborn blood hunter with dragon mutton chops who has a shady past and is looking for redemption. Here we're at the body. You can see in the corner here we have a couple of dragonborn characters to use as a reference while we sketch out a really quick draft of the body position. He's not a very loud or brash character. The description reminded me of a character like Geralt from The Witcher era. So he doesn't really need to be doing anything too flashy. I really liked the second position, but I thought it was a little bit too chic for this character. I like to start out with the stick figure method, simple circle for the head and a wiry sort of bone structure, if you could call it that. The point here is just to keep it loose and have fun. Each of these figures only took a few minutes and it was on to the next until I found, something I was into. In the end, I went with the proud and buff position, though I ended up changing his head and turning it to the side a bit. I feel like there wasn't enough focus on the mutton chops in the forward position. So it's a Kermit Scratch position. Now to add some details for the line work here. Personally, I like to use real animals as a reference when I can. I think they can be more relatable than, say, another artist's interpretation of a T-Rex or something. But those can be really cool as well, like the dragon designs for Game of Thrones. That was on point. Great, it's great stuff. Or the Wyvern type dragons from Skyrim. I think those were awesome too. Just generally, I think animals that can be simultaneously cute when they're relaxed and then kind of scary when they're in a fight mode are a little bit more interesting to me from a design standpoint. The line work here is just to keep a good reference so it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. The more cleaned up, the better. For the stomach and the inner thigh and on the inner part of the arms, I kind of added the classic lined belly sort of thing, like from a snake. There we have him. Flexus, naked. Now we're just getting a base, just some matte colors. You can see here I've used the lasso tool quite a bit. I like to kind of draw, the lasso around an area so that I can be a little bit more free with what I'm coloring in and stuff. These are just like kind of blotchy shadows to sort of trick myself into seeing a little bit of a third dimension with this character. Nothing here is really final. But the lasso tool is just to sort of pick an area that I want to color in and not just blast around, and get kind of messy around the outside, or have to go back and do some erasing in different parts of the drawing. Just kind of keeps things a little cleaner. This took me a long time to figure out how to do on the digital form. I was kind of just coloring like you would on paper, trying to stay within the lines. I got a pressure tablet, so that was really helpful during that process, but this kind of makes things a little bit quicker. Making some shapes for the armor. I like to just sort of get some blotchier shapes to get the armor vibes. You can see in the corner some reference pictures. Wanted some studded leather armor, so just picked a couple pictures from Pinterest and Google. You'll notice on the side I'm adding a lot of layers. Basically dressing flexes here from the base layer up so that it kind of seems a little bit more, natural where the armor is sitting on him. Not really spending time with line work necessarily on this part. This is just this is sort of a new process for me, so subject to change in the future. So I think it's good to figure out something that you're comfortable with first and move on from there after you figure out what you're doing. Constantly looking at different artists' videos on YouTube. Been on Skillshare recently, just learning the ins and outs of Photoshop, and that's kind of helped the process as well. Here we are. We've got the leg braces and knee pads and stuff. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so you could probably see some of those influences. I know Star Wars, a lot of armor is influenced by the kind of samurai vibe of armor, but I kind of wanted to have a mixture of the layered samurai armor sort of thing, and also, the very Skyrim / medieval look to the armor. But he's, you see him, he's dual wielding his crossbow and he's got his sword. So, the crossbow arm, want to give him some protection because he's sticking that thing out. If somebody takes a wild chop at his arm while he's got his arm sticking out, he's got some armor there. And then want him to be pretty nimble with the sword arm, so kind of kept it as basic as possible. See, I kind of thinned out his armor a little bit there a second ago. Just making it fit a little bit better. Now we're working on the gloves. I wanted to add a little bit of another third dimension, behind him, kind of cloth draping over his tail area. So it's not like he's got, a giant hole in his pants and you can see exactly where it's going, and kind of links up with the underside of the belt. On this part here, we're just going back to the layers that we've already made before. That's why I've got so many layers. Go back to those layers and hit the old alpha lock on them. And that way you'll be able to color over top of those layers with a different color, but you won't break the shape. You'll be able to kind of keep the same illustration that you've made before. And then on the hilt here, we just doing a quick rough design, just wanted to give the sword kind of an old feel. In the description, he can enchant this sword with a fire enchantment, the same with the crossbow. So I wanted to give him kind of like an older feeling, like maybe that was some sort of magic sword or crossbow, or maybe there's something to his character's story that I don't know. Didn't really overthink it, just kind of vibing at the time. Here we're going back in, we're going to be adding some details over top of the line work to kind of give it a sort of traditional feel to it, like you're actually looking at a standing dragonborn guy. I'm using a lot of that lasso tool to kind of keep the area. And then after I've done the shadowing, I'm going over it with a very thin brush and actually drawing out the scales with a little bit of a hard line so that you can make out, the difference in the scales. Because, dragons are reptiles and pretty much all lizards, like, and snakes and stuff. You can see those scales. That's a really defining feature, and I really wanted to get that in there. Took a second for sure, but it's well worth it. Now we're on a separate layer, we're highlighting, just giving the edges of the scales a little bit of a brighter highlight to be like, yo, these are scales. Lasso technique really is very helpful, very crucial technique to kind of feeling a little bit freer with shading and stuff. So really support the lasso tool. That's you'll have a selector tool in Procreate, I think. I used Krita previously, and they had a lasso tool there. It's really helpful, and most software has something like that. So went for the option of really working on the skin first before the armor and stuff. Just wanted to get that all out of the way and then be able to focus on the armor, textures and stuff there. Once I had a good idea of how I was going to approach illustrating the skin and shading and the shine part, Then kind of moved on to the armor, giving him some shadows and some really dark shadows, and then, you know, some highlights and stuff. This is the first time I did this here, is kind of creating, you know, a design of sorts onto the actual under, like, I don't know, tapestry under the belt. I just made a new layer and picked a kind of purple line to make the design, and then I alpha locked it and kind of used an airbrush at different parts to give it this kind of shinier look there. We're just adding metal to the armor, you know, giving it a little shine. This is like very free-flowing type stuff, so for sure took a minute, but I'm sure there are better, or rather different processes. Everybody's got their own process. So I used a rough acrylic brush for this part, give the leather kind of, you know, a rugged look, like it's got pores and stuff. And then adding rivets, you know, the studded armor look. It's got a lot of metal rivets in there. Then here making the belt, I actually had a lot of different layers going at once, but then as I got the base layer design, like the matte colors, I kind of put them all on one layer afterwards, and then went on to shading, you know, back to creating texture. Create the texture with the rough brush, and then I'll go back over that with a lighter color and a hard brush to kind of give those sections leather strips there to pop out, you know. To give the handle a little bit of a wood color, so I got another rough brush, and I don't remember exactly which brush it was, but just kind of give it some streaks there. And then same with the end of the handle. It's got this like kind of old dragon tooth sort of vibe, so it's like a rough brush with a little bit of lighter color, or sorry, rather darker color than the matte on the bottom. And then did the same thing that I did with the rest of the leather on those straps, and then went back underneath and gave a highlight to the wood to give contrast to those straps, you know, so they pop out a little bit more. And then here we're working on the cross guard, kind of wanted to have a stonier sort of feeling, like this old stone feeling, and in the shape of fire, because, you know, this thing can be enchanted with fire damage. Now we're just making, I forget what they're called, like they're the little dip in the center of the sword is like for letting the blood flow out of a stab thing. I stabbed whatever you're stabbing. So I don't know, a hunting knife a long time ago. And then in the center of that, put these kind of symbols or runes to sort of illustrate the idea that you know, this was an enchanted sword intentionally, like there's some sort of old magic at work there. And used the airbrush on a completely separate layer and got a brighter color yellow and went over it to make it look like the letters got a shine to it. Here we are with the rough brush there, kind of giving it the wood a grain, you know, just vibing, feeling it out. It's not complete exact science on creating a wood grain. A lot of this stuff was just like really feeling it out and experimenting. And we just got kind of an airbrush. I don't want to cover up all of that wood grain, so do a light airbrush so it doesn't completely lose that wood grain underneath, but yeah, definitely darkens each side. And the same thing with the highlights, just kind of giving a little bit more of a pop and dimension to the crossbow. And you'll see I do the same thing here shortly with those runes and letters after I get through shading the metal parts. I'll add, you know, these runes. Oh yeah, here we are. Right here we're on it's kind of a leather handle. If he ever gets around to two-handing that crossbow, he's got two-hand leather parts, so it's comfortable when you're holding it. And then he can also breathe fire, so I made a new layer and kind of use a lasso tool to draw a little area around where the dips in the soft part of his skin might be. So, and then we'll turn the opacity down so it's not like super bright and you can see the hard lines. And then I quickly just erased this pattern of nerves and stuff, so it looks like it's kind of like transparent skin. Here we are going back at the tail. Forgot about that part when I was doing the skin and scales earlier. Giving him a nice shadow on the scales, a little shadow and shine. Got a thick sort of snake-like tail. And yeah, there we have it. Flexus T. Rexus. Nice and finished. Thank you for coming by and watching this. Again, it's JSL Art Town, and for any updates on current projects and upcoming projects, check out my Instagram, Brobaka. You can go to my website, jessesalgado.com, for commissions, and if you feel like supporting me, head over to my Patreon. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.